Right. Hey everyone, I'm Klloo. So, new Flesh and Blood set has been announced. Super Slam coming September, right? So this was our little suspense teaser that falls in line with it being Canada Day, right? As pointed out to me. So happy Canada Day. But yeah, the world premiere for Super Slam will be in Canada itself, hence the timing, if you will. But we now know what set 17 is, and we know what the color scheme from the gem packs represent. So I am still on the tail end of being sick, and the local armory that I go to is having their 200th armory event celebration tomorrow. So I'm going to try and conserve my energy a little bit, and we'll probably split this up into two, right? We're just going to touch on the core aspects of Super Slam, if you will, for this one, and then we'll leave the cards to be reviewed in the next one, which will still probably be tomorrow, right? But Super Slam. Now, from my understanding, the trailer and the themes might be a little bit divisive, but I do also feel they're being played up a little bit, right? So, for instance, the trailer just gives off big wrestling vibes, right? But in truth, it's not that dramatic. So even in the little blurbs in that, right, we have like stone cold foils getting in the ring. But once you start looking at the cards and everything, it's still just the normal core flesh and blood thematics, right? But the set does feature in the Deathmatch Arena, so this is essentially heavy hitters too, right? So heavy hitters appears to be one of the areas that we will be revisiting at a regular basis, which is beautiful, right? I think it fits as one of those more festive sets. So for instance, we had Everfest, right? Then heavy hitters, and now heavy hitters 2 by way of Super Slam. But yeah, the wrestling motif is definitely not my cup of tea either, but I would say take it with a grain of salt. It's still very much the dark-ish fantasy aspects that we're used to for Flesh and Blood, right? With a little bit of fun sprinkled on top, similar to, High Seas with the gravy stuff where, yeah, everything was a pun and maybe it got a little bit annoying, but at the end of the day, it was still pretty gruesome, right? Necromancers. Yeah, a lady sawing off her own leg. No, right? And then the normal pirate tropes and the tinkering sky warrior mechanologist stuff, right? So yeah, trailer aside, look through the cards, look through the set, do the general thing, right? If the classes aren't your normal fits, sure, leave it be. But yeah, I do think the trailer might do it an injustice, and again, playing up those certain aspects, right? So anyway, onto Super Slam. So yeah, we will leave the cards, but again, artwork wise, phenomenal as per usual, right? And then even on the dark side. Although what I do find interesting initially here is the gem pack is this blue and red, right? But it's only half of it, right? So the blue and red represent one of our new talents, and then the yellow and orange represent our other. And those two talents are our Revered and our Reviled, right? Which is again going back to the wrestler motif of having your heroes and your villain characters. But it does seem like they are still, engaging in a fight to the death. It is called Deathmatch Arena, although, technically speaking, did anyone die in heavy hitters? I don't know the lore side of thing, right? But do enlighten me. But yeah, leave the cards aside. Let's touch on the product. So, listen to the crowd cheer your name or erupt into boos at your very sight. Super Slam pits Guardians and Brutes against each other in Deathmatch Arena with no weapons, just fists and wits. Revered heroes draw in the crowd's respect, while reviled heroes play dirty. Whichever side you choose, it's a show of a lifetime, right? So it is a Guardian and Brute-focused set, Warriors being axed, right? I guess they don't want to do 6 heroes or 3 class sets. No, we've had 3 class sets in the last few, right? It seems like we go 3, 3, 4, no? Right? Although in this case, the 4 is 2 Guardians, 2 Brutes, 1 with each talent styling. And then a special set feature, Super Rares are back to pack a punch in Limited, giving you more than 40 different signature smackdowns to build your deck around and delight the audience with. Push the boundaries of Flesh and Blood gameplay with both a 3 intellect hero and for the first time ever, a 5 intellect hero, right? And this is definitely something that has been on the table for a while. It's just that question of how do we balance it? And, discard was probably the simplest thing they could have done, but what they have done is definitely intriguing nonetheless, with breathtaking marvels, stone cold foils, and the biggest expansion slot ever, including key reprints of high demand cards. Super Slam truly has something for everyone. Don't hold back, it's time to get in the ring, right? So from this alone, there is some pretty hefty bits of information for us to digest, right? That is Super Rares returning, although currently it seems like they're only for Super Slam itself. I have my own sort of headcanon justification for that, right? Which we'll touch on. And then we have, of course, the biggest expansion slot ever, including key reprints of high demand cards. So it being the expansion slot, I would highly assume that anything's on the table, right? It's not just, necessary Guardian or Brute cards. It is anything from generic to whatever's popular at the moment, which needs a reprint, right? So that is definitely wonderful to see, but it also means pull rates and the other stuff that we generally talk about is definitely up in the air. So what I really want to touch on is, of course, the set composition for now, right? So 1 Fable, 5 Legendaries. 5 Legendaries is always nice to see, right? It means they should be a little bit easier to cycle around, right? We have 6, but sometimes 1 drops off. Holly, for instance, right? But 5 should be, nice and easy to handle. Again, to me personally, Legendaries have never been an issue. We have Rainbow Falls at a reasonable place, right? Aside from maybe generics, and then the Cold Falls being, the actual chase value version, right? But Majestics, right? There are 42 Majestics and 40 Super Rares. So at a first glance, that is definitely a crazy amount. But again, the expansion slot is massive. I don't know if it actually says it. Sorry, in the product page, but it does in the actual Super Slam page. So we'll use that for reference, right? So we have our product configuration. So our expansion slot, right, features a whopping 31 cards, right? So that brings our Majestics from 42 down to 11, right? 11 Majestics and 40 Super Rares is a bit more reasonable. It's still kind of crazy, but, they're separate. So the Majestics themselves should hopefully be a little bit easier to pull and collect, right? Again, I will sit down, I will look at all the numbers, and I will try to work out where pull rates need to be level with what currently exists. But for instance, if it was to just go back to like Welcome to Rathe, right? Which I forget to point this out every time because we haven't had Super Rares in ages, but Super Rares were a rarity featured in Welcome to Rathe and Arcane Rising that eventually just got mixed with Majestics, right? So we only had 10 Majestics in Welcome to Rathe, but they were 1 per 12 packs. We had 15 Super Rares at 1 per 6 pack, and then eventually they were combined, and that works out to our effective rate of 1 in 4, right? If you get 2 Super Rares and 1 Majestic in 12 packs, so 3 in 12 makes it 1 in 4, right? Math aside. So we are getting Super Rares back, but obviously this number is astronomically bigger than this ratio, right? So instead of 10 to 15, it's now 11 to 40, right? So that could be a troublesome sign depending on what they actually do with the pull rate. If they push Majestics up, right, and then Super Rares stay at even this 1 per 6, if essentially they go back and split up the pull rates to what they were in Welcome to Rathe Arcane Rising, then Super Rares become a really, really troublesome slot to pull, but Majestics stay okay, right? They're not great, but they're not bad either. So yeah, we'll have to see where that ends up being the case. But as for the expense slot, right, we go up to 31, but the pull rate has been increased. So we're now at 1 in 6 boosters, and the effective rate for our expense slot cards were 1 in 12.5. So this does mean that they've essentially doubled the card pool and the pull rate to justify it, right? So generally speaking, the expense slot should remain the same. There's just a whole lot more of them for you to find and collect, right? Or, trade. So yeah, 31 is definitely an exciting number because it means there should be the normal level of support that we've seen in other sets. So for instance, High Seas featured 14 expansion slot cards, I believe. I really should have scrolled these first, right? Yeah, 14 expansion slot cards. So we've gone a little bit more than double that. But again, they're not actually 1 in 15. They're 1 in 12.5 when we work it out. So hopefully this also means that this is the actual rate and not the combined rate. Because, for instance, Rainbow Falls are 1 in 18, right? So if this includes a Rainbow Fall expansion slot at that rate of 1 in 6, then they're going to be a little bit higher to pull the normal rate, right? Which, depending on what you prefer, I prefer non-foils, but generally speaking, LSS do generally show us numbers at a combined level, which can make it a bit tricky because they're not correctly reflective of what they actually are. So yeah, we definitely have to wait and see what comes out, right? What the actual packs say, what the collector's page say. But yeah, I've always wanted more cards in the expansion slot, right? Because it doesn't hit enough heroes to me. Now, obviously, we have a lot of key reprints as emphasized by the little blurb. So I'm curious what that level is. Again, my first thought is we'll get the normal, say 15 new cards to expand class constructed play. And then from that, we'll have 16 core reprints, right? Which is still a nice amount. If they do that every now and then, eventually we'll have a proper collection of cards. I'm curious how they'll handle. I assume they're just going to be normal versions, right? No white border shenanigans, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, the other big change to go along with this is we're going back to 1 basic card, right? So in Super Slam Limited, you only remove 1 card, and it's from the front of the pack instead of 2 cards from the back of the pack, right? So again, we're getting more cards overall. So that means that's already less tokens, basic cards, right? Plus then, of course, we have the legendary rarity, we have Marvel cards, and we have Cold Falls returning to the actual product, since there is no, treasure pack like High Seas for Super Slam. So overall, we're getting less basic cards. So what that means is either, stores or alternative products have to fulfill that niche, because drafting or limited could definitely be a little bit of a rough time if you don't get those staple pieces. Now, the other big thing that Super Slam does do is it mentions this no weapons, right? So pits against each other in the Deathmatch Arena with no weapons. Now, they can all use weapons. That has been clearly shown. So the assumption is it's going to be a macro, right? It's going to be a macro that allows you to pay maybe a resource to swing your fist, something like that, right? So very, very curious, but obviously that means they can cut out a certain degree of those basic cards. So the other question is, what about the adults? Because although we got them in the basic slot for High Seas, finding adult heroes was also kind of still rough, right? So yeah, this could be an extra rough time, right? Lots of changes, lots to be hopeful about, but also some to be a bit pessimistic, right? So yeah. Now, in terms of the super rares, we get less rares than usual. Not a lot, but we get less rares and we get less majestics for the inset. So again, I'm just going to take out 31 because I assume all the expense slot cards are still going to be majestics. I can't think of, aside from like Sink Below or the generic staples, any rares that need to be reprinted for specific classes. So I would assume the expense slot is still just entirely majestics, right? So we take out 31, leaves 11 majestics and 40 rares, and then super rares in the middle. From this, what I gauge is that the super rares will be essentially the top end of the rare cards and the bottom end of the majestics, all collated into this collection. Now, we do know that they have this running theme, right? So we have, where is it? The super surprise, right? Think of them almost as specs, if you will, right? Essentially they are, since it's Revered Guardian for Thespian Charm, right? Meaning that only Pleiades, the new hero, can use it. Same with this one for Tough Nut, right? This one for Rathe, I believe that's how you say his name. And then this one for KO. So generally speaking, they are specs without the spec tag. So Cheyenne is definitely seeing less and less love, unfortunately. But generally speaking, it seems like these will be specific, powerhouse cards for these decks, right? Which is definitely nice. Means they will be, hopefully, easier to pull, but also they will create a more dynamic feel to limited and sealed, right? Now, the other thing here is coming out of retirement for one night only, super rares. My, again, headcanon for this is that this is, again, another trial run as a lot of, new interesting stuff that we see. For instance, the gold packs of Mistvow, I would assume, were a trial run for the full-fledged version of it in High Seas. So I would expect the next few sets not to have super rares, but depending on how they do in Super Slam, right, and pull rates and easing prices, then maybe we see super rares returned in a later set, which is, again, something I'm hopeful for because, yeah, something needs to be done about play pieces versus, collectible pieces, right? Some play pieces definitely need to be reined in, and super rare is an easy way to do that if it's done correctly, right? So I would like to see, the more specific card stay as a majestic, and for instance, all generics be super rares at a slightly easier to pull since more people collectively want them. But we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, 40 different signature moves. Again, emphasis on that wrestler motif for our 4 different heroes. But again, right, it is a huge amount of cards, regardless of the pull rate, for you to cycle around and find, right? Aside from that, 14 marvels, there are 4 heroes in the set, so we can take out 8. That leaves us with 6, right? No idea what they could be. I would assume tokens, because we are getting new stuff, and in the Guardian Mastery Pack, which I suppose is something else we should touch on, we are getting the Seismic Surge, but maybe there's something more fun, more flavorful. Just nothing pops out at me. At the moment, none of these heroes obviously seem like they'd have an ally or two, right? Oh, actually, you never know. It could be tag teams, I suppose. Continuing on with the motif, right? For the Fabled, I mean, it could be the Revered Deathmatch Arena, but at the same time, I assume it would be some other version of Deathmatch Arena that correlates with this and the whole crowd booing and crowd cheering mechanic, right? But I think we'll leave it there for now, right? Oh, well, we do have the Armory deck as well. Pleiades will be the Armory deck, one of our new heroes, but I suppose this is more to talk about with the new cards. Is there anything... There we go, pre-release. That is something big I missed, right? So pre-release is now in a kit, right? Pre-release events will be running in more than 1,600 local game stores across the world from Friday, September the 19th through to Sunday, September the 28th, and then the actual release of the set. Entering the ring for the first time, weighing 11 ounces, we are thrilled to announce the new pre-release kit box. Play in-store or purchase a kit and play with friends and family in the comfort of your own home. So that is definitely wonderful to see, right? But what does it include? Well, it doesn't really say here, but luckily enough, it does say so in the FAQ. So, the pre-release kits, if I can remember where I read it. Here we are. Each pre-release kit contains 8 Super Slam booster packs for you to use for your limited, right? A promo pack containing 9 cards. So, I assume, again, that's all your tokens and your heroes to make everything run smoothly. Although, again, there's the mention, or the continued mention of no weapons, just wits. So, I mean, she looks like she has a key weapon, but anyway, yeah, there's confidence, vigor, might, I think has been mentioned. Everything but agility. Confidence is a new one, actually. So there should be lots of tokens, is where my head's going, right? But yeah, 8 Super Slam booster packs in a nice little box, which should also make it a little bit easier to streamline in terms of running. And again, that fact that you can take them home and you can play. And them being sealed kits, any leftovers, stores are welcome to sell them, right? So yeah, little 8 boxes, little 8-pack boxes for Super Slam coming. Aside from that, on the product sheet, I don't think I missed anything, right? Super Rare's back for a guest appearance. I don't think there's any hints at the rates. Cold Falls 1 in 24, as per usual. Our second rare is now competing with Super Rares or a Majestic, as per usual. And only 1 basic card, which then, of course, can be an expansion slot, a legendary, or a Marvel. Aside from that, price point remains the same. Set is around the same size. Again, it's just big amounts, right, of extra goodies by way of the expansion slot and the Super Rares. But again, the rare count is down reflectively, right? So, yeah, I think we'll leave it there, and we'll go over the cards in the next one. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. You pumped? Again, it's definitely not going to be, my favorite set, but again, if we put the pageantry aside, it still has the normal flesh and blood elements that I do enjoy, right? I mean, if you didn't say this was a wrestling match, this is just a nice, very evil-looking version of KO. That's kind of cool, right? Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.